Hello, Eagle. My name is Mayor Jason Pierce, and we're going to do the last of our webinars here, and it's going to be on the future of Eagle. And so, when I moved here 20 years ago, it was really important to me that I had a community that my kids could grow up in and continue to live in even after they moved out of the house, and my grandkids could grow up in and everything else. And, we fled California like so many, and we really wanted to make sure that they wouldn't have to do that. And so I got involved pretty early in what was going on in the community. And today we're going to talk about what the future of Eagle looks like with me as your mayor. So we'll get some questions. Hopefully you're logging on and asking questions, and we'll answer some stuff here today.
Mr. Mayor, can you talk about how you've taken the future into account as you've supported different projects here in Eagle over the last 4 years?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that we've done. So I'll be honest with you, one of the most important things to me is that Eagle stays conservative. And what I mean by that is that we have good morals and values, we have a clean, safe city, and that we're able to do things that will keep that for the future. So some of the examples of the things that we've done are the densities and the way we actually build our community out. I've been on planning and zoning, I've been on parks and pathway, I've been on urban renewal, I've been on city council, and now as the mayor. If you look at the densities in Eagle, they're way lesser than anywhere else around. Eagle right now is 1 unit per 1.5 acre on average because of all the open space we have. And then now, we've annexed Avamore, which is going to be 1 home per 2 acres. So it's even less dense than Eagle is today as we annexed it. So that'll be tremendous for the future of Eagle and how it develops. We've done other things. You look at us, we put in the shooting range that we're getting ready to do. Being able to have a shooting range in your community lets people know what kind of community you are. We've made the city a 2A sanctuary city, which tells people that, we value our Second Amendment rights, and the people of Eagle will be able to bear arms for as long as it's part of the Constitution and forever. You look at some of the development we've done with commercial development. We've really focused on the mom and pops. And having that type of business in the city of Eagle, you've got different than what you have in Meridian, Boise, and other places. And we want to make sure that continues. My opponent has talked about bringing in more corporate business. Well, when you bring in more corporate business, you put the mom and pops out of business. And I don't want to see that happen. It really makes Eagle different. You look at our restaurants, they're not the name brand stuff. You got Coins and Crave and Bardonnay and, Happy Teriyaki, and you've got all these different places that are just different, Jovino's and Rembrandt's and Da Vinci's. You don't see the corporate brands here, and we really, like that. We've got new stuff coming. You look at the Gem State Brewing, you look at Spitfire Taco. Wild West is rebuilding a building on the corner of State and Eagle that will go back in there. I mean, all those types of things are what really make Eagle different, and it's what will really help the future of Eagle.
So can you explain how a project like the broadband, fiber optics, is going to set the stage for a good future for Eagle?
Yeah, so the fiber optic thing was one of those that I was looking at when the ARPA money came through. And for me, what's really important about it is the fact that we will put the fiber in the ground to everyone's home, and you will be able to have your choice of ISPs on there to actually give you internet service. What's nice about that is the fact of a couple things. In a community like ours, there won't be a lot of investment from private companies because we don't have the density. They can't get their return on investment as fast as they can in other communities. And so then you look at the fact that you won't have companies being controlled by the federal government what kind of internet you can see or not see. It can be open for everybody, and making sure that people have access to that. You also look at the fact of the cost. We don't have to make a profit. So we can have a cost structure that's set up that actually save our residents money and even our businesses. And when you talk about small mom and pop businesses, right, every nickel and dime counts. So instead of paying $400 for a good internet service a month, we can be down to the 150 range, which will really encourage those mom and pops once again. You look at homeschooling. I mean, homeschooling is done so much here in Eagle, and having a very good internet connection makes homeschooling a lot easier and better for parents. And so that's something that's important. Being able to have folks that might work out of state and work from home, and they need good internet. You've got small businesses that start out of their homes or work out of their homes after hours, and they have good internet service. So all those things are very important to having a good broadband system in the community and making sure that we're not falling behind from other things that are happening. And one of the other big things with our senior population growing is telehealth. I mean, having a good internet connection as telehealth will get more and more popular in the valley will be important moving forward too. So all those things really help to build a strong conservative community.
How do you see the role of city government playing out? You know, where does the responsibilities of city government end and the private sector begin? You know, where's the line between those?
Well, you know, that really comes down to what it is that the residents of the city want, right? As, you know, cities are created by people who want better services. And so there's things that folks want. They want trails, they want parks, you know, they want a good public safety, they want all kinds of different things. And so that will really go as the city and what people want. Obviously, the more limited government, the better, but we also have to make sure that we're able to do things in a cost-effective way and make sure that we're using tax dollars as wisely as possible as they come in.
So it wouldn't really work then to have each resident contract with their own garbage company. You know, it makes sense for the city to contract as a whole with one company.
Well, yeah, you know, that's kind of interesting. I have had some folks say that, and even the commercial businesses, but imagine if, let's say there were 5 trash companies within the city, or even 2, right? Now you have double, triple, quadruple the number of trucks that are coming around. So if you know, you have one on your street that uses one company and the others use a different company, now all of a sudden you've got 2 trucks driving down, you got one picking up 1 can and the other picking up 10, let's say. That just doesn't make any sense. And so what we do is we contract as a whole. And so with the trash company, which was, you know, an interesting thing that we went through, is the council looked at both contracts that they were presented with, Republic and Hardin. Republic didn't give us the same contract and say, hey, we're doing the exact same thing we're doing today there. And Hardin had a contract, and their contract actually was better. And there were things not only in the contract that were better, but also safety-wise that they did, from fire suppression in their trucks to cameras in their trucks, to the fact that we had actually had 2 Republic trucks tip over in the city of Eagle in the last year when we had made that decision, one in a cul-de-sac and one out on Highway 44 and Edgewood by the Starbucks. And so, you know, the council looked at that. It was a 4-0 vote. Everyone on the council voted for it, including my opponent. So that wasn't a decision that came from me. It was a decision that came from the council.
50 years ago, Eagle was a very small town. Lots of farmland, lots of open spaces, only 1 traffic light. And now we've grown to a city of 35,000 where, you know, it's spread out quite a bit, lots of traffic lights, lots of traffic. And that's how it's grown in the last 50 years. Where do you see it going in the next 50 years? What's Eagle going to look like in 2073 when our great-grandchildren are here?
Well, hopefully, it's still the best community in the Treasure Valley, let alone the country, as far as I'm concerned. You know, I moved here 20 years ago, there was only 10,000 people here, and now there's 35,000. And so, really, it's what can we do to make sure that that growth is done and managed the best way possible in the long run. If you look at Eagle, what we've done is now that we're 60 square miles of land, we have the ability to grow out instead of up. Most cities will start to grow up. If you look around us, you know, we're 1 unit per 1.5 acre. You got Star, who's 3 units per acre. You look at Meridian, who's 6 units, and you look at Boise, who's 5 units per acre. I mean, their numbers are astronomical compared to us, and you won't see a lot of cities throughout the country that'll be approving 1 acre, 2 acre, 5 acre lots like we still do. And even when we approve stuff that's smaller lots, we approve a lot of open space. If you look at Legacy that was done in the past, you know, that's 40% open space in that community. You look at Valnova, which is up above Beacon Light, that's 50% open space. And then we just annexed Avamore, which when they're done, they're expected to have 75% open space in their project as a whole. That's huge because you leave the hillsides and the hiking trails and the equestrian trails and everything that is up in those foothills open for people to be able to use freely as the public. Luckily, they've been able to use it out of the kindness of the landowners that are up there, but it's someday that could have stopped, and now we put it in a way that it will be in the public hands forever.
Aren't you afraid that some council in 10, 20 years might start building up in that open space and go a very different direction?
Well, you know, hopefully that we have good leaders in the future that won't allow that to happen. You know, people will be able to decide what they want in the future, but once again, if it's not in our control or able to be managed at all, we have no say today or in the future. At least the people of Eagle today and in the future will be able to vote for what it is they want in the community. You know, one of the big things that my opponent, you know, talks about not wanting Avamore, not wanting density, but yet he is the one who made a motion to accept a 55-foot tall building in downtown Eagle with 3 floors of apartments. That's just not what we want. That's a 15-foot exception of what the rule is allowed. And luckily, we have 3 council members who didn't second his motion. And at one point during that motion, he said that we need to be able to help the developers make these projects pencil. That's not our job. And you know, the tough part is that he also said the fact that, well, do you want nothing or do you want this? Those are your only 2 options. Those aren't your only 2 options. And we've got to fight for a community that we want, and it's going to be tough. There are times when projects like that are going to come up and you have to say no. But then what you do is you go work with those developers to find something that will work for them and make it happen in the community. I always said you can't give up something that's going to fix a 10-year problem to create a 100-year problem. And that's what those types of things are going to do. And that's why my opponent is not the right person for this job.
So on the other side of the street there, where the Mamma Mia's was, that project is not going over 3 stories?
Well, so here's in downtown, the comprehensive plan says you can have up to 40 feet. If you put 3 stories within the 40 feet, the 3rd story has to be stepped back. So if you think about it, we just had the building built behind the Heritage Park, which is a 2-story building, but it has a pitched roof, right? So that building's almost 40 feet, but it has a pitched roof, and that's why it gets the height there and only has 2 stories. The building on the corner will have a flat roof, so it can get 3 stories within 40 feet, but that 3rd story has to be stepped back. So there's a patio section out there, and it just doesn't look like a big wall as you go through downtown. It looks more like a V, and it gives a better visual perspective.
It sounds like the citizens of Eagle really need to have an understanding of what makes Eagle special. Otherwise, they're going to vote for people who make all sorts of crazy promises that are never going to come true or create problems that don't exist. How do you explain what makes Eagle Eagle? How do you teach that to people?
Well, I think one of the things that people really need to get involved in is what's called the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan shows what it is and the vision that the people of Eagle, not just the elected officials, but thousands of people that have go through this process every 5 to 7 years, and they get to help guide where the city goes. And you can get on those committees, you can put your name in when it comes around, and they get appointed by the mayor and the council to be able to give input. On those committees are also, you know, the sewer district, the fire district, the sheriff, the police chief, you know, all kinds of the different school district, all those folks that are different taxing agencies that help to also build our community. So that's a great way to get involved and find out what's going on. But you know, there's a method to the madness and the things that we've done over the last 20, 30 years to make Eagle a great place. And what I love about the conversations I have with people is, you know, I could talk to someone that moved here 2 days ago and they have the same enthusiasm and love for this community I had 20 years ago. And it's because we've continued to have a clean, safe community for years and years and years. You know, the decisions we made 20 years ago is why we still have an A+ crime rating in the city of Eagle, right? It's still why we have the least amount of graffiti. It's still why we have no homeless. It's still why we don't have panhandlers, right? And my opponent has been in other communities where there's a B crime rating at this point. The things have been going down in those communities, and that's from decisions that were made a while ago. It's not the decisions that were made a year or 2 ago. You see those things long term.
So one of the things that's really been a part of this campaign is your opponent wants to add a lot more police. There's some formula out there for how many police there are per how many residents, and apparently we're below average. What do you say to that? Because I thought Eagle was a pretty safe city.
Yeah, well, our comprehensive plan talks about a more cohesive way to figure out the policing, and that was done through the input of the sheriff and the chief when the last time the plan was done. And that is looking at what type of calls are our officers taking, how many calls are our officers taking, along with the number that is thrown out there, the 1 per 1,000. But there's a lot more that goes into that. If you think about it, 1 per 1,000, does that work in New York City or Chicago? Probably not, right? Does 1 per 1,000, you know, in McCall Probably not. I mean, there's different things in different ways. You gotta look at the public safety and policing as a bigger thing than just one per thousand. And the interesting thing about what my opponent is asking for is it's not even what the sheriff's department is asking for. We sit down with the sheriff's department every year and talk about not only what policing we need that year, but what it's gonna look like in the next year and the year after that. And we've done a pretty good job. That's why we're a safe community. And so, we'll continue to go down that route, where we work with our sheriff's department and the police chief to do the things that are going to be best for Eagle, because we contract with the sheriff's department. And, I love that relationship. I think we're able to really get more bang for our buck that way. I think it makes it cohesive for the fact that we're able to work with the county and our local police that we have here in Eagle. They get to share responsibilities in different places. One of the things I've been fighting for is to make sure that we're not getting taken advantage of, and making sure that we're not paying more than we should be and getting the police services that we deserve.
Speaking of how much we're paying, what would you say is the state of the city's budget right now? Do you have a surplus, a deficit? Do you have a rainy day fund? How's the cash flow doing?
Cash flow is doing great. We have been really put together a capital plan and a capital maintenance plan to make sure we're putting money aside for things. One of the most proud things that of the last 4 years is our capital maintenance plan. We were not saving to replace the stuff that we already had in the city. And so the first year I became mayor, we were replacing Merrill Park and Gerber Park. Well, we took $2 million of that year's tax money and we spent it all to work on and replace those things at Merrill Park. Well, why weren't we saving money over the last 18 years, $100,000 a year, so that we could replace it with money that we had been saving for? And so, we've really worked on that, because we don't want to add new things to the community if we can't continue to take care of what we already have, right? You don't go out and buy a new car when you have to repair your, heating and air conditioning. And so that's kind of the same mentality we took. And it was kind of a small business approach to government, which I'm not sure a lot of people do, but we wanted to kind of run it that way and make sure we're very prudent with people's money. The budget, as far as a lot of people have made hay about the fact that it was a $29-30 million budget when I first took office, and now it got up to a $60 million last year. Well, that's because we were saving money, putting money away. We sold some property that was worth $9.1 million. We got $6.5 million in ARPA money. There was a lot of things that added to that. But what's really been good about it and proving that what we're doing is working is this year our budget came down to $52 million. And that was because we finished projects that we saved for, we spent the money, and now you bring the budget back down. And it's just like you in your everyday life, right? If you save up for a car and you got $40,000 in your savings account, well, now, gosh, your savings went up a whole bunch. But if you go buy a $20,000 car, your budget now is down to $20,000 in your savings account. So, that's just kind of the mentality we brought to the city, and I think that's going to be good moving forward. The other nice thing about the capital plan is in those years when we don't have as much building and growth, well, we'll be able to take care of the necessities because we have this money set aside, and the public gets to see what's out there and what we're saving for.
So you don't necessarily see taxpayers as just an unlimited piggy bank to do whatever sounds good at the time.
No, and what's funny about that is the first year I was mayor and I was talking to staff and I would ask, hey, we had this, revenue for sponsorships. Why isn't there any money in there? And they go, oh, the past mayor said, don't worry about it. The taxpayers will pay for it. And that's just not the mentality I have. If you look at also my opponent and what was done in Hollister with tax hikes, with going into deficits during the downturn and everything like that, those are not the things we want to see here. And so that's why we've been planning for the last 4 years to make sure things happen right in the city of Eagle.
So speaking of the city, how would you describe the environment in the city staff, in the offices of all the people that you work with every day?
I think there's a great camaraderie. It's kind of like a family. Everybody gets along. Once in a while you're going to have somebody that's not happy, but that's just the way it is when you've got 70 to 80 employees. You've got folks that are looking to move on to other places to make more money and do things. We've had jobs taken away that the state is paying $10, $12, $13 more an hour. We have other cities that are paying $5, $6, $7 more an hour, and sometimes we can't afford the same thing that other cities can, and so people end up leaving. And honestly, you're going to have people sometimes that leave, and you don't fight to keep them because you realize, one, they could go on to another opportunity and do more somewhere else, or you realize that maybe they weren't a good fit for the city of Eagle. So We have a great camaraderie here. We have folks that have been here 27 years. But there's an employee here that wanted to retire 3 years ago and is not retired because of the fact that he likes the way I run the city and do things here and has stuck around and has been a tremendous asset to the city.
How would you describe your leadership philosophy, both as an elected mayor, but also as, the person who essentially manages all those staff?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. So first I'll talk about the council. So, one of the things I did when I became mayor is I sat down with the council, especially the two ones that were existing from the previous elections, and said, hey, listen, I'm not here to give you options and tell you what to do. You are to do your own research. We'll give you all the information you need. If you have questions of me, you come and ask. But other than that, you guys have to make the decision for what it is. You're elected just like I am, and you, as the council, actually make the decisions. I administer them unless there's a tie. And so I think that scared a couple of the council members because they hadn't had that before, but I was also thanked by them because the fact that they were only given options by the last mayor rather than actually getting all the information and be able to make decisions themselves. And so that's been a tremendous, I think, advantage for our community over the last 4 years. Sometimes when you make decisions that way, it looks ugly in public because things aren't being worked out behind closed doors. But, sometimes you got to see how the sausage is made. And that's really what you get to do in that aspect. Then when it comes to the staff, the first thing I did in my first department head meeting is told all the department heads, listen, you are professionals in your jobs. You know how to do yours better than anybody else. I am here for you. I will check in with you. We will make sure we're guiding the city correctly, but I'm not going to micromanage you. If I have to do your job, then I don't need you, right? And so people really, I think, took to that. It took a little while because they were, I think, constantly under the microscope. I allow people to make mistakes, and then we learn from them and make sure we don't move them again. And that's the only way you can make sure a city long-term will have really good employees and folks that'll care about the community. Because, not everybody that works here lives here. And so you've got to have them have a buy-in in what we're doing here in Eagle and fall in love with it and care about it as much as I do.
You mentioned working with the council just now. How has the council gone out in the last 4 years and been proactive in each of their own roles?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. My opponent has been one of those that's talked about a lot of things, but really hasn't done anything. I think in a podcast, he actually said he feels like a mushroom in the closet and just comes out once in a while to vote. Well, that's only on your own accord, right? I mean, you get to decide. You're the council, and especially as the council president, I mean, you're as powerful, if not more than me, because you have the ability to reach out to your council members and create an atmosphere where, you can get things done. You can't meet with more than one at a time, but you can talk to individuals and you can make things happen. Charlie Baughan, when he was the council president, he brought through the conservation education program that we started, that now new homes and new homeowners that build an Eagle will be paying into a fund that will help purchase and save farmland and open space. And that was a huge thing. You have Helen Russell, who's done things with the senior center. My opponent, when he was the liaison to the senior center, he had to turn over to Helen and get her to be the one to actually do the work because he couldn't figure out how to help out the senior center. And then she became the liaison. Then she goes after, a public safety grant that's going to save us hundreds of thousands of dollars in our policing moving forward. And Brad Pike has done nothing but talk about, policing and public safety, and we have to do all these things, but has done nothing to actually bring something to the table, and especially that's going to help the taxpayers. I think coming from that background where he did in California, it's the same mentality that the past mayor had, which is don't worry about it, the taxpayers will pay for it. We'll just keep raising taxes. And that's just not the mentality that we have here and haven't had over the last 4 years. Melissa's brought things forth with the library and with other things there that is the liaison and have made things better to make sure that we have a good library that's safe for our kids and safe for our families. And that's been a huge, tremendous asset. But I'll tell you right now, my opponent really hasn't brought anything to the table. Showed up on Tuesdays and voted on things. And to be honest with you, the two things that he touts that he has been against, both Avamore and a project over Highway 16, basically gave away the ability to make any decisions on those lands that are still going to affect the city either way. And then boast about the fact that he voted no on them. He basically just said, hey, Star, you go ahead and do whatever, and hey, Ada County, Boise County, Gem County, you go ahead, or even Avamore be your own city, and then they get to make the decisions on what this is gonna happen around our community. That is not the philosophy that's gonna make this community great in the next 50 or 60 years. We have to take the bull by the horns, and we have to make the tough decisions and make sure that development is done Eagles way and nobody else's.
Speaking of Eagles Way, I find it interesting that both you and your opponent lived in California before here. A lot of people have come to Idaho from California, as well as from other West Coast states. How would you describe the difference in philosophy between the way a city in California, such as Hollister, is run, and the way Eagle is run?
Well, a lot of cities in California, and I think there's only a couple in Idaho, but Eagle is not one of them. They run with a city manager. And a city manager is basically, to me, is just a bureaucrat that runs the city. And then what they do is they hire 4 or 5 council members, and then between them, they decide who's going to be the official mayor of the city, right? Who's just kind of a figurehead. And that's what my opponent was in Hollister. And with that, you aren't making the decisions necessarily. You're going in and you're asking, hey, what are we doing today? Hey, what's going on? How do you get things done? As a matter of fact, even when Brad came in, those were some of the things that he was frustrated with, was the fact that he couldn't go to a city manager or to the city attorney at any time and just ask questions, because that's not how it works here. You know, they have to run things through me. Now, what I've done with the council, though, is I've said, hey, you have access to staff and anybody that you want. If you need it, just don't take advantage of it and schedule it with them. Because I want our council members to be educated on the issues. They're the ones making the decisions. I want them to be educated on the stuff. If I'm just giving you all the information, then I'm the one in charge of everything, and that's just not how way good government works. You need to have people with different things. All the different council members, even Brad as a council member now, has a different opinion than Helen sometimes, and Melissa sometimes, and even Charlie. So, you know, that way they get to bring in all their little, so we can make sure we make the best decisions for the community.
So how do you keep, all these people came from California to here. How do you keep this what people came for and prevent people from wanting to leave to go somewhere else where their values are more protected?
Well, I think you just need to fight hard. I mean, it's a hard battle, right? You've got coming from you at all sides. For the last 4 years, we have had the ex-mayor that was here and others come at us on every single decision we make. I actually had an email from one of the largest Democrats in the city that said to me, you haven't agreed with us on this, and this. And I think it was like a list of like 14 things. And I took it as a badge of honor. And that was because I want to make sure this community stays safe. I want to make sure it doesn't turn into the communities around us. Right here in the valley, we're seeing that happen, let alone the places that so many people have run from. And we've got to keep this just an incredible place for our families to grow up in, our grandkids, our kids, our grandparents that are coming here, our great-grandparents, all of them. We just need to have a great community moving forward.
I know we talked about this in a previous one, but it's an important issue. Somebody just wrote in with a question about Eagle Water and asked, why didn't you support buying the Eagle Water Company to assure that water is adequate for growth?
Well, so what I will tell you is that I did support it until we started looking at the numbers. And so when we started doing our due diligence and looking through the process of what made sense for the city of Eagle, we were looking at having to run a $15 million bond for the city of Eagle. $7 million of that money would have been used to maintain and fix the system. When the council and myself went through that, we realized that this was just not something that was going to be good for the future of Eagle. It was a money pit. It didn't have extra water rights. And like I said, the system just was not taken care of very well. And so the council, at a 4-0 vote, including my opponent, voted to not purchase the system. And luckily, we made that decision because of the fact that we have found out from the folks that bought it, Veolia, that they are going to spend $20+ million to fix the infrastructure inside the system. And so we were able to do a lot of things by not purchasing it. We were able to make sure that the costs were spread over 7 years, the increases to the existing water users on it. And we were able to make sure that there were areas that we could use our own City of Eagle water system in. And we were able to get back $1.7 million of expenses that were put out there as it went through, so it was better for the residents as a whole. So there was a lot of good things that came out of that. I would have loved to have bought the system, and we really should have done it back in probably 15 or 16. But, our previous mayor didn't want to touch it at that time, and it just finally got to the place where it was financially out of reach for us to be able to purchase it.
Are you confident, though, that with the systems now, with Eagle Water, or City of Eagle Water, and then Suez, Veolia, that we're all gonna have water for the next 50, 100 years?
Well, you can never predict anything like that long, but I'll tell you what we have done with future development is we have put it, because of those that have to bring, especially the big developments like Valnova and Avamore, they have to bring the water to the table. They have to make sure it's still there. So at some point, we could cut off building permits if they can't provide the water anymore. And what we've done is we built a system in the city of Eagle that is actually coming from 3 aquifers and coming through the city as a whole so that we can then make sure we have water from all different areas. And that's going to be a tremendous asset moving forward for the city of Eagle, and making sure that we don't have to paint our lawns green and, water them, once a week.
Going back to, you mentioned the local Democrats. Both you and your opponent are registered Republicans. I remember sitting with you both at the convention a couple of years ago. However, in this race, the local Republican Party has come out in favor of you, whereas it seems like the local Democrats, they're doing phone banking right now for your opponent. Why do you think that is?
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting is if you look at the endorsements that I have, Russ Fulcher, Raul Labrador, Rod Beck, former Mayor Nancy Merrill. It just goes on and on with conservative folks. We just had the I've got the local District 14 GOP endorsement, right? All the conservative groups are backing me. And then you look at him, and he's got 2 groups. He's got the Fraternal Order Police, which is great, and he's got the local fire union. And I respect both those organizations, but he has nobody. And then you look at also anybody he's worked with. Nobody has personally come out and endorsed him that he has actually served with another elected official. I have the 2 current elected city council members, and I have the 3 current city council members that have all come out to endorse me. And he hasn't had any of those personal endorsements. And I just think you need to look at really who is going to be the person to move the city forward in a conservative manner.
So when it comes to your time as mayor, how would you contrast it, or compare and contrast with the other mayors in the Treasure Valley? How are you different?
Well, I don't know how they really run their cities because I'm busy running mine and not worried about kind of what they do. I'm more, interested in what we're moving through the city of Eagle. Obviously, I really think our community is the best in the Treasure Valley, and I said even the country, and it's because we do things differently. I think we look at things differently. We care about the quality of product we bring in, the quality of design. We care about it looking different. If you look at, the subdivisions like Two Rivers and Island Woods and Legacy, and the amount of foliage, and just everything you do, Eagle just has this different feel than anywhere else. And we want to continue that moving forward.
So that would be what makes Eagle different from, say, Meridian or Garden City or even Star. What else really makes Eagle stand apart? I'm just trying to nail down, what is the Eagle way? What is it that makes Eagle special?
Yeah, and like I said, I think we get back to the design, right? You get back to the things that we do in our downtown and how things look. Our city has a design review board. It has a planning and zoning commission. It then goes to the council with the recommendations from those groups. You also look at how we design our subdivisions. It's kind of interesting. The Homestead subdivision off of Floating Feather and Linder was actually started in the county. And when the city realized that they were just not doing it Eagle's way, they kind of decided, hey, you've got to annex into the city so we can fix this and make sure things are done right. And that's why we pulled in projects like our Legacy back in the day. It's why we pulled in Spring Valley. It's why recently we just decided to bring in Avamore. We want to make sure these things that are going to affect the community long-term and today, that they're going to be done Eagle's way. And I think when you look at the lower densities, you look at the open space that's provided, You know, Eagle's one of the only ones that has the river, the foothills, everything in the valley, and we can really take advantage of that to make Eagle special and better than anywhere else.
So, that sounds great. Final thoughts on the future of Eagle, what this community means to you, and what do people need to do to preserve it?
Well, I'll tell you, we haven't had a two-term mayor since the 80s. And I think it's time that we continue what we've been doing. And we have been making sure the development has been getting less and less. As a matter of fact, when I first became mayor, we were doing 700 to 800 building permits a year. This year, we did less than 200. We've been bringing those numbers down. And I know sometimes it looks like it's getting crazy around Eagle, but it's really what's happening around us. And we need to control for the future of Eagle as much of the land around us to make sure that their philosophies don't infringe on Eagle residents that are here today, and make sure that the projects that we do approve are not going to be burdens on those that are in Eagle today, that they will take on the responsibility of building and the taxes and the cost to build the future developments. And that's what we've done with not only Avamore, but others.
Well, that's the end of our live stream. So where can people go to learn more about you and your philosophy and your plans?
Well, I think the best place to go is pierceformayor.com, and that's the number 4 in the middle, and see what's going on.